All right, I'll get rolling here. So now we're going to switch gears from quality. We're going to start studying transportation. The first thing is they're talking about transportation design. There's 5 different modes, or what they would call modalities. Motor carriage, which is what the business we're in, which is trucking. Advantages and disadvantages. Mostly it's reliable and highly available, but it is impacted by weather. Air freight, which is very fast and very expensive. Rail, which is really slow unless you're moving large amounts of commodities like coal or iron ore or something, oil or something like that. Water, which is very common for us to use when we're shipping from overseas, which is, inexpensive, relatively speaking, but takes forever. And then there's the pipeline for certain commodities like oil. It's cheaper to transport it by pipeline than it is by train. When considering the transportation modality, review the following factors: the type of goods to be transported, the mode or modes that are best suited to meet the organization's needs, delivery requirements, including time, organizational needs, and cost, third-party providers. So we don't use a lot of these guys, but you might consider the MSSs we use around at our plants to be 3PLs. They're used for separate modes in warehousing. They don't take ownership of the products. They just do kitting and stuff like that. 4PLs, on the other hand, are end-to-end logistics to get the product to the plant. So they may take ownership of the product depending on the situation. So what we do with wheels, we have it used to be called Alcoa. I think it's called Howmet these days. They have a couple of facilities outside Chile and Denton that get the wheel and tire, and they put them together, air them up, and send them over to the plant. Now, we pay separately at PACCAR for the wheel and the tire. But if Howmet were to buy those wheels and tires themselves, and we were to pay them for the finished assembly, then Howmet would be a 4PL because they're taking ownership of the product and selling us and doing some work and selling it to us. And then there's freight forwarders. They combine small shipments from many customers to make a full car or truckload and get lower rates. So the freight forwarder will make money by buying the whole ship or truckload and then divvying up the pieces and charging a higher rate to a bunch of customers. And they keep the difference. A broker, on the other hand, solicits business from shippers who are their customers based on the known availability of the carriers they represent, and then the broker charges the carrier's published rate to the shipper and deducts a commission. So brokers work on commission. And forwarders, on the other hand, work on, they're taking risk where they're buying the whole vessel or the whole ship or train and then divvying up the pieces. Shippers associations, nonprofit groups of shippers that negotiate lower rates with carriers by combining their members' volumes. These are kind of like co-ops. Transportation regulations. U.S. has following federal agencies regulating transportation. And these all fall under the Department of Transportation, interestingly enough, which there's their website. So the Federal Motor Carriage Safety Administration, making rules for commercial vehicles. National Highway Traffic Administration, NHTSA, They're the ones that do the investigations of the accidents. Federal Highway Administration maintains federal highways and roads. Federal Railroad Administration, Federal Aviation Administration, Maritime Administration, Federal Transit Administration. So it just goes to show you, once the government creates an entity, it never goes away. The European Union uses its transportation policy to ensure the free movement of people and goods throughout the EU and to address issues such as climate change. So the EU is much more aggressive on climate change issues and air pollution, water pollution. And Japan also has some regulations for maritime, railroad, road, and civil aviation. And then transportation restrictions. So multiple rules and restrictions exist. For example, all carriers have weight and volume restrictions. And the reason all countries, well, all non-third world countries do this, major industries, because if you overload the truck or go over 80,000 pounds, most of the bridges are not designed to handle that weight, and the roads aren't designed to handle it either. And if you put too much weight by overloading the truck on a particular axle, then you go out there and destroying all the infrastructure that your taxes have built. Laws restrict the transportation of hazardous waste. You got to get permits and all kinds of stuff to do that. And then you've got border crossing issues. So freight classification rates. A carrier who is providing the service of transporting the goods will classify goods according to their value, their density, or their weight, and their susceptibility to damage and theft. The carrier then applies a distance cost rate. This is the list price. And these guys, this is the same way we price our trucks, right? Nobody pays list. The buyer then negotiates a discount from the list based on the volumes. Now, for technology, you got computerized transportation activities. They can be categorized into 4 groups. The first up is the TMS, or the Transportation Management System. This is software. Oracle makes ours. It's used on the 2nd floor. It's got all kinds of things like planning and decision-making, execution of plans, visibility, measurement, spend, capture, manage contracts, ranking options, clearing customs. I don't know how much ours does in comparison, but it can do all these things depending on the package you buy and from who. And then there's some other program types, freight rate maintenance and auditing. This looks at what the carriers are charging you and make sure it's right. Then you've got traffic routing and scheduling is what the carriers use to schedule their trucks. And then you got some analysis software that provides historical reporting and vehicle maintenance software. You also have GPS as a radio navigation system. It's used by truckers to locate their equipment. And traffic routing and scheduling, which we talked about up here. Features such as sequencing and timing of vehicle stops. It's all done with transportation software these days. There's also RFID chips attached to each product. The retailers use it and track access and compile data. PACCAR currently uses the technology to track location of parts trailers, the whole trailer in the plant parking lots. But the problem is it's pretty spendy to put this stuff into operation on every part. Relocation and movement process. When relocating products or manufactured, consider logistics. So in PACCAR system, if you're moving from the part manufacturer from one plant to another at the supplier, then you have to do this production plan change request, PPCR. quality gets involved and you have to re-PPAP the part. Packaging considerations. Proper packaging can help reduce the costs and should be designed to fit on pallets and maximize the use of the shipping space. So you don't want to be shipping a lot of air. It's expensive. Stakeholder involvement, supply management should be involved in the creation of policies and procedures since they know the capabilities of the supply base. Cost considerations, supply manager have good understanding of the cost of each of the modes and the trade-offs. So the primary factors that influence transportation costs are labor, the drivers, or the crew, and fuel. Communication and notification. Companies are adopting automated notification systems for things like ship dates, expected arrival times, warehouse staging locations, that kind of thing. And then logistics risk, shared or shifted risk. So logistics risk can be shifted upstream to the suppliers. So the suppliers are always upstream and the customers are always downstream by making them hold inventory longer. So now you're shifting the risk of obsolescence to the supplier. Downstream to customers by putting catalogs online and converting the store to order from an inventory stocking location. So instead of stocking the goods, you put stuff online and you just make one at a time as you get the orders. And then shifting logistics costs from a fixed cost base to a variable cost base by using 3PL and reducing the firm's assets on the balance sheet. So the 3PL will probably charge by volume or something. And you can share risks by changing the Incoterms. So the two or three that we use, mostly we use FCA or free carrier at. Duty delivered paid we use for some suppliers, and duty at place, I think is what that is for other suppliers. We'll cover Incoterms in a few sessions here. Supplier now owns the material much longer to pay for logistics and customs. So if we move from FCA to duty delivered duty paid, then the supplier's paying all the freight costs and insurance and everything else. All right, freight classifications rates are generally based on which of the following? What do you guys think? Any guesses here? Kind of
A.
goofy answers. What's that?
Alpha.
Yeah, I think because it's got this negotiated between shipper and carrier, I think it's going to be C, but it's probably the former standards probably are this national freight classification system, so it's a little confusing. See what they say. Yeah, see, most carriers use the former. Most carriers use the former regulatory standards because trucking used to be regulated up until the 1980s. You had everybody charged the same fees. But we'll negotiate with shippers based on such items as shipping and volume. And then the national regulatory system is no longer in effect. It was deregulated, 40 years ago, but they still use the same concept in rates tables. When a shipper checks performance of a carrier based on such items as the carrier's willingness to commit to continuous improvement and acceptance of innovations, the shipper is performing a what? So you're checking on things for innovations and continuous improvement.
B.
Yeah, I don't think it's cost audit. Maybe performance audit? I don't know, it's kind of a weird question. Let's see what they have to say. A, Performance audit. Monitoring and reviewing the carrier's performance related to continuous improvement and innovativeness. The shipper's performance audit. No mention of checking actual costs versus stated costs is made. Okay. A process audit would need to include a review of the actual process of the shipment to be correct. Yeah, it's just one of their goofy questions. All right. There are 7 questions out there. You guys go start working on them. And raise your hand when you get done. Otherwise, we'll go over answers at 2:25. All right, let's go over some answers here. Number one is alpha. Water shipment will greatly lower the cost of transport with the location and less trucking the shipments from the port of entry. It'll take more than 2 days. Two is delta. The freight issues described require the analysis and management provided by traffic routing and scheduling software. Three is Bravo. Traffic routing scheduling software provides the sequencing and timing of vehicle stops. Four is Alpha. Right, because specific dates of delivery would typically be part of the requirements for shipments. I was looking for an accept. Five is Delta. Deadheading, which we didn't cover, but deadheading is returning a truck with an empty container. So it's towing an empty trailer. Six is Charlie. 4PL is a strategic partner that provides an independent and single interface between client and multiple transportation companies, as opposed to a 3PL, which is a tactical service provider that facilitates the movements of parts and materials. And seven is Delta. Because one would not want to shift a cost basis from variable to fixed. We're looking for an accept. All right, so tomorrow, what are we covering tomorrow? Manage transportation, more transportation for like the next 5 days. Then we get in the warehouse. All right, talk to you guys then.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep.